Welcome, and thank you for joining for another whiskey review. Today, we have Dustin's favorite cheap whiskey.
Not so cheap anymore, buddy.
Springbank 10, yay. Springbank 10, 46% ABV, one of the newer releases. Dustin, I like Springbank, as you know. I have many bottles.
Yes.
Not this one. But you have always loved Springbank 10. Wow.
This to me, Mike, is just the most perfect 46% drinking whiskey. Has everything. Has the peat. Has the sherry. Has a little bit of funk. Malt forward without overpowering it with cask influence. Balanced. Beautiful. I love it. And I'm going to keep buying it no matter what Springbank charges.
As you know, I keep disagreeing.
Until my wallet disagrees.
As you know, I keep disagreeing with you.
Yeah, you guys saw him do the fake disappointed voice. No, that's his actual opinion.
I'm like, Springbank 10, did you bring this for a reason? Other than review? He said, no, I brought it to review. I said, yeah.
I just want to drink this every day.
Okay, Springbank 10. Springbank's a very well-known at this point craft distillery, and we love a lot of what they do.
Yeah.
I'm a Springbank fan. We've done over 30 Springbank reviews. We love this distillery.
We do more.
I have bottles. You have more bottles. This is the basic offering. Let's get to it.
Yep. So this is kind of the newer bottle, no box, guys. That they do so many batches of this that I have no idea. Sherry bourbon maturation. I'm done talking.
All right. So I'm always a fan of older Springbank in general. So you're getting a little bit of that youthful Springbank maltiness, which has always come off to me with a twinge of a banana note, especially in this 10-year-old. So I get banana, that little bit of that funky Springbank note, but the pastry is different. Normally it's a sugar funky pastry, like dough left out too long with a little bit of sugar. The dough's very clay-like in the 10-year-old to me, and there's no sugar. So take normal sugar dough cookies, except for replace those sugar dough cookies with lumps of clay. That's where I'm at.
I'm getting vanilla wafers. I'm getting a little bit of saltiness is coming through, a little bit of that coastal element. There's a hint of this very middling, very nondescriptive peat that's coming through on the nose. Mm-hmm. There's a light sherry that's giving it a touch of chocolate.
What'd you rate on cue cards?
Just what I'm picking up, buddy. And then I'm getting just a little bit of citrus, which I think is coming from the bourbon barrels. I'm guessing these are refilled oak. And Springbank around this age tends to give me like a citrusy note on those barrels.
Light citrus, I give you that. There is vanilla. There is this, the clay note that I get on this is almost like Baijiu. You know what that is? I've mentioned that before.
I don't think I know that one very well.
I think they make it usually in China. Mm-hmm. I'm not exactly sure. It's some type of like rice wine style type drink or something like that. I think they age it like in some type of a clay container. And I get a little bit of that Baijiu clay container with a little bit of rice spice in this.
Mm-hmm. There is a little bit of harshness actually on the finish on this one. A little off-putting note there at the end.
All right, I'm going in.
Go for it. Yeah, just there's something off in the barley note here at the end that's unusual for Springbank 10 even. It's just a little off. But overall, very inviting, easy drinking, kind of your daily sipper style Springbank. Mike, what do you got?
It is a creamy malt. I'll give it that. It's always been kind of mouth-cloying. 46 is a minimum good ABV, as we said before. More pepper and spice than I remembered. And that really sticks to the side of the tongue instantly when you put it on the palate and as soon as you finish. Mm. Yeah, there's a little bit of light vanilla, a little bit of that clay note that's still there. It does kind of sashay into a soft, maybe bread or a soft pastry that is unsugared and very, very plain. It's a very stripped bare Springbank. I can see the building blocks of some of the whiskeys that I really love here, but only a couple. Mm-hmm. And a couple things that I don't like. I don't really like that underdeveloped clay note. I don't like that the peat note isn't very noticeable in this one comparatively to the other ones. It's a very basic version of it. And then the sugary notes in this are insubstantial.
So what I love about this boast, Mike, is this carries the nicest smoke element in any Springbank.
Okay.
Now, it's not the smokiest, it's not the peatiest, but because that bourbon cask is probably very reused, it has this nice smoky element on the finish that I absolutely adore. I like the fact that they've gone with this very kind of tired bourbon cask up front to kind of bring forward the malt. I do pick up a light bit of sherry, Now, that said, Mike, this is the worst Springbank 10 I have ever had.
With water.
Go for it.
There was a note I was kicking around that I didn't know if I was smelling, that I know now I'm smelling. There is a vegetal sour note to this. And with water, it comes off quite a bit more. Now, I don't mind vegetal. It's in Lagavulin. Mm-hmm. It's intermingled in the peat note. It's too young of a peat note in this particular one. On top of that, adding water to it brought out a sourness that I am not liking at all. That's what water did to it.
Yeah, so what I'm picking up, Mike, is the sour note that comes in these younger Springbanks from very tired ex-bourbon casks.
Probably right.
I am very consistently getting this on single casks that I've had around this age, as well as this bottle. That said, this is probably the least sherried of the 10s I've had. And they did not do a good job on this particular bottle, nailing down the casks. Usually, again, tired casks is a standard thing for the bourbon side of this.
Sure.
But they're never quite this tired.
Yeah, that really sour note usually comes from a bourbon cask that's been used too much.
Yeah.
I've seen it before. I didn't expect that out of Springbank. Maybe sour is what they were going for. But it almost reminds me of the Balvenie 12-year-old single barrel in terms of that sour note. Which, again, bourbon cask maturation.
Yeah, and some people love it, some people hate it. And this to me is kind of that right there, Mike. This particular batch, and just for the heck of it, like I said, they put about 5 of these a year. So this is the August 17th, 2021 release, the 21/120. Definitely taking the Springbank 10 in a more youthful direction than they historically have been.
But the things they're focusing on with that youth are sour and vegetal notes. And I agree, this isn't the best Springbank 10 I've ever had. Not that I've ever been high on this whiskey, but this particular one isn't impressive for a whiskey that I've never been impressed with. That you keep making me try.
Now, this is the first Springbank 10 I brought up here, maybe ever.
No.
I'm pretty sure
I've had 2 here. We had the one with the rubber seal on it. Keith's had them, bring them up.
Keith brought some. This is the first one I brought.
Okay, whatever. You guys still insist I try this whiskey. All right. Anyway, point is.
The last batch I had of this, which was also a 2021, but it came in a box, was really good. Well, I'm talking, I would have given it almost a 90, Mike.
Okay, well, let's focus on this one.
But, I want to point out the fact that people, the 2021 has been hyped. There's 5 batches of 2021s, guys. They're not all the same. Just had to put that in disclosure.
For sure.
So, Mike, give us your score.
All right, so I will say this before I give my score. This is my least favorite Springbank 10 I've ever tried. I've been going back and forth between an 83 and an 84. I'm going to go 84 because it's still a solid malt, a solid ABV. And you can tell it's a quality whiskey much in the same way the Balvenie 12-year-old single barrel is probably a quality whiskey, 47.8%. They were going for something most likely that I'm not into.
Yeah.
Just because I'm not into it doesn't mean it's a bad whiskey. But for my enjoyment, it's probably less than an 84. But as far as a whiskey score, to be as fair as I possibly can, I'm going to say 84.
Yeah, so I obviously am higher.
Obviously.
Still love the finish on this thing. I love that light smoke. I will say this, Mike. It's hard for us to score this whiskey properly in the context of what we've been drinking. Because we've been having some cask strength stuff, and we've had some heavy wine finishing.
Well, I don't have an ABV or mouthfeel problem with this whiskey. I have a taste and smell problem with this whiskey.
Well, what I'm getting to is some of the finishing here that this thing really does do a pretty good job of. I'm getting it. I recognize it, but I'm kind of partially using my memory of the last time I poured this to sort of help me tease it out. There is a very nice smoke element here on this whiskey. This is a subtle whiskey, Mike. This is a very subtle whiskey. And so I am going to go lower than I was initially going to say. I'm going to give this an 86. I was an 87. And I think generally Springbank 10s are in that 88, 89 range. I've never had one I was going to give it a 90. I've had a few that I got close. This is definitely a significant step back. But it's still, for me, Mike, this is just, if you want to know what Springbank is trying to do initially, this is the way to understand it. If you don't enjoy this whiskey, you're not going to really enjoy the rest of the Springbank line in the same way that we do. And, you give it an 84, it's still a solid score. Because let me tell you, a lot of distilleries, if they put out 10-year-old whiskey and use tired bourbon casks, we'd be giving it 60s.
Again, I keep comparing it to the Balvenie 12-year-old single barrel. I like Balvenie. I don't like that Balvenie. I still think it's a quality offering. It's just not for me. And that happens.
I like this so much more than that bottle.
I'm not even comparing them. I'm just comparing them in the way of how they kind of sit with me as far as distillery compared to offering. I will also say this. If you called an 86, right? And I called an 84, we're saying the exact same thing.
Perhaps.
That's your Springbank curve. It's your favorite distillery, like it's my Lagavulin curve.
But you've scored the 25s higher.
I'm not saying it's a perfect 1-to-1. What I'm saying is essentially we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
This isn't the best offering. I'm never high on these 10s. I've always told you the older Springbank gets for me in general, the better it gets for me. And I know I can say that about most Scotch whiskey distilleries.
Yeah.
However, with Springbank, I think it's more true than maybe any single malt Scotch whiskey distillery. The older it gets to me, it's just better.
Yeah. The thing for me, Mike, is I used to, until recent releases, I always liked the 10 over the 18. Now, the new 18s that have been coming out, it ain't a contest.
Well,
they've gotten good.
I'll give you this caveat. I prefer the 12 cask strengths better than the 15s.
Same.
But they're 12 cask strengths. The 15s are 46% ABV.
15s are just weird sometimes, too.
We agree. And maybe that's just not a great spot for me. So it does happen where I like a younger Springbank. Core offering, a little bit better, younger.
Yeah.
But just in that one regard.
Totally understand. And, again, I think this is a polarizing whiskey because they have gone sour here, guys. And more so than I prefer. And I love Springbank, but I don't like sour. So...
Have we seen Springbank's best day? I'm not saying they're still on the decline. I'm not saying they're going in the wrong direction. What I'm saying is, have we seen the high watermark?
So the two 10s I had before this one, Mike, were the two best 10s I've ever had.
Okay.
The recent 15 we just had, I think it's one of the better 15s.
Agreed.
A
whiskey I don't like.
The last two 18s we've reviewed both. We were very high on.
Agreed.
And the most recent 25 was, if not our favorite, it was right there with the 2016.
Yes.
And, so Springbank has done some odd things recently. The local barley, we disagreed on where we were on it, but neither of us thought it was one of their best locals.
Agreed.
So I think Springbank actually is on the whole getting better, but they're Springbank. They're constantly playing around, constantly doing inconsistent batches, and they're constantly putting out different whiskeys for different people.
Yeah, I was very encouraged. The reason I brought that up was just because I've had that question asked me a few times. I was very encouraged by the 21 offerings from Springbank. You're right. The 15 to 18, which I got multiple bottles of both. The 25 was good. I mean, there were a lot of good offerings right then. And, you're going to have drop-offs here and there. Yeah. I don't mind if you have a drop-off with your core offering. I'm not interested in your core offering. Being the youngest one. Beginning of the core, I should say.
The entry level.
Entry level core. Forgive me. That's what I meant. Anyway, those are our thoughts on the Springbank. If you guys had a chance to try this newer 21 version, let us know what you think. And Dustin, until next time, what do we wish the folks?
Happy funky drinking.
We'll see you then.